confirmed emails at the last panel, so if you're.
Well, we simply note in our minutes that
Okay.
we note that point in the minutes, and on that basis we can take a motion to formally confirm the minutes from Peter's. And the chairman will second that, so your minutes are formally confirmed. We simply note in our minutes that we note that point in.
Sorry, that's been checked.
Okay, that brings us to item 2, which is general business. I have no general business. What about the panel members?
I have no general business.
No. What about the council? Are there any issues that the council needs to raise or tell us about it? No. So there's no general business. That brings us to the reason we're here. We have just 2 development applications today. And I presume we deal those in the order of the minutes there. We've the order of the agenda rather. Now,
I don't know if the conflict of interests, I've got several conflicts of interest. It's usually on the agenda.
okay, on this item,
This is in relationship to the park.
the parks, okay. Well, let's leave that till we come to the second item. But take with us no conflicts of interest with the item 1, Lindenhurst Crescent. Now I've forgotten what the process is, but shall the panel have a preliminary discussion and then invite others in, do you think? Yeah. So do we have any issues?
I have none at all. I went and looked at the site yesterday and we looked at it again this morning.
I looked at it just from the road this morning, but I haven't been out and about to look at it.
It's the least attractive part of Hunters Hill, I thought, but the damage has been done long ago, I think, and it seems to me this is, I mean, whilst it doesn't complain for particular areas, the non-compliance already exists. So it's really only an internal arrangement of what exists at the present time.
Yes, my thoughts on it are the same, is that I think there are some major concerns about it fitting in terms of the heritage conservation principles, but that area is already not really meeting those standards, and the house that it's replacing, it's actually providing a betterment. I do think that it could do better at being less obtrusive from the waterway, and that the colour may be better as not a sort of stark white, but a more muted colour, because it does present as a sort of a definitive 3-story building, which, you know, ideally we prefer buildings to present as 2-story, and I think that it would be better if that was not in a stark white.
Yeah, I agree. That appears in the image from Sheffield.
Yeah.
Yes, that was going through my mind when I looked at these the agenda last night.
You know, from a heritage conservation point of view, the view from the river that we're trying to preserve in Hunters Hill is the concept of natural vegetation on the waterway, not terraced, but that's existing. Gardens between buildings and views between buildings, and particularly views of the heritage items that are usually up on the ridge lines. So I think it doesn't want to be drawing attention to itself. I think we want to be drawing attention to the heritage item up on the ridge line.
Yes.
So those were my only comments.
I think they're very good points.
In that respect, would we want to go as far as to say that there ought to be at least one major tree on the lawn area. In my view, always is that or attractive in these houses to look through a filtered view anyway.
Mm.
So say an Angophora like the one that's like this one sitting up behind. There,
Yes,
if you had one down here. Because I know that these sorts of houses never seem to do it. And I don't know whether it's something one can really impose as a condition, but maybe we could contemplate that.
all the planting which is on that plan is Banksias and
Yeah,
low lying fruit, as it were.
well, it's hard to know whether you're in natural soil there or whether it's fill. On that. On that grassy area.
What sort of a tree would you think might?
Or not but
Hmm,
because they're so common in Hunters Hill and they're so distinctive of Hunters Hill.
hmm. I'd certainly be supportive. And I actually think if one is living in the place, then to look out through an Angophora is more pleasant than looking straight at the water, actually.
And certainly more pleasant the other way.
Yes. Does council have any views about that? About planting at least one tree? Significant tree. Okay, well,
There's a feature tree noted close to the house, feature tree with mixed planting below.
a
I
feature tree.
think probably it is on reclaimed land by the look of it, so it might. But not impossible, and I'm very comfortable with it. Presenting just here,
Yeah, it's in a box.
close to the house, yeah, but I was thinking, is it a respect of the difficulty of any kind of deep soil planting?
Well,
But Angophoras will grow anywhere.
yeah, hang on, doesn't grow out of rock. I suspect it looks like it's got an olive tree from the perspective. I suspect that's a planting box, and
Something huge.
wouldn't do well in a box, even though it's a big box.
And what about on the street frontage? Council have any strategy for free planting in that street? Not that you've told us what. There's nothing in there.
It's strictly entirely hard. There's no.
Yeah, it's
there's
a
no
very
nature
unpleasant
strips at
street.
all.
It's not,
Yes,
it's really lost its character,
Yeah.
hasn't it?
yeah.
Hmm.
So I think if there was a tree, it would have to be on the property.
Yeah, proposing an ASA. Yeah.
Yeah, they are proposing trees there.
Yeah,
You know,
the Japanese maple, as I recall.
There's space for it on the property, isn't there? The wells.
Yes,
There's two cars. One side and then bin stores, and then, but on the other side,
That's where they're proposing the tree, which is it a Japanese maple?
just a Japanese maple, which is with this, hasn't been off, but it's been. Fairly minimal when it comes to environmental issues and shading and so forth.
In a very hot environment too, with all that hard landscape
Yeah.
around it.
yeah.
Okay, shall we invite the applicants to what is? Yeah, I guess.
That's the 20 interest.
Yes.
Are the applicants coming in? So
Are there any objectors?
No, so the only people registered to speak between the first and then on behalf of the applicant.
We're asking for consideration about stormwater easements. Does council have a response to that? I'd ask council for reconsideration of the stormwater easement.
Yeah, that was incorrect. It was amended. I think we got advice from engineers and they said that they incorrectly. Not sure.
You'll raise that with them.
Sorry.
You'll raise that with them.
Yeah. Did we email the incorrect?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, when you.
Sarah, but you did email them.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
I did.
You
And
will
it's
email
all
them
done.
regarding those.
And it's also here for this.
I'm Peter Webber, the chair of the panel today. Other panel members are Sheridan Berg, Peter Watts, my colleagues there. You probably know the
Meredith,
council
yeah.
staff. Yeah. Okay. We've had a little bit of discussion about it. We've looked at the site. I think I'm sure we all have. I think we're generally fairly supportive, but it's a question of possible location of 2 additional trees at least. One on the water side and one on the Princess Crescent side. You need to tell us anything first though about.
No, sorry, I'm Mary Randalls from Wee Phillips Architects. This is Anna McLaren
From Wee Phillips Heritage and Planning.
and the owner, Lorraine
Hmm.
Yeah. No, I'm really just here to answer any queries that any panel members have in regards to the application. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's fairly straightforward and there's no. There's hardly any issues with it at all, as far as I can see. Other panel members got no problems?
Yeah,
Any questions?
Just a question. Do you know whether the ground, the lawn level on the water side is fill or is it natural ground level? Idea?
I think it would be part fill, part natural. Yeah,
Yes.
because it's flat.
Yes,
So it wouldn't
it's
be.
flat and there's the stone wall
Yeah.
on the
So I think
harbour.
it would be fill.
Yeah.
The thought was to have a condition, an engulfer probably in that location. So there's one sitting up behind, so it's a very open lacy tree. But it's a question of what the soil condition is there.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, would its roots be able to go into,
Where they grow out of rock. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but sort of,
Yeah.
we are, that lawn level is sort of at, it's very close to the waterline. I'd say even sort of, there's been times when, the salt water has even sort of come over.
yeah,
So, I'm very wary of, I understand that angophores, they don't need a lot of soil to grow in, but
Yeah.
I think it's really the.
Well, looking at trees to put on the plan for down there, that's why the landscape guys recommended palm trees, which are currently $2 down, seem to be growing quite well down there. They don't have such an aggressive root system.
So one of the things that the panel was discussing is that it's quite an important issue for Hunters Hill is maintaining in the conservation area a number of qualities when a property is viewed from the water. One of the things that we look for is the concept of buildings set in, as much as possible, natural foreshore, buildings set within gardens rather than hard up against each other, glimpses between buildings of green space, and then also if there are any heritage items, like you have a big heritage item behind you, that you're subservient to that and not drawing attention to yourself. So one of the things that we understand that the building that's being replaced here is that you're making a betterment in a lot of those respects. But we're looking at how we can improve that betterment And one of the things is the house is presenting very much as a 3-story house because of the dark white and the windows. We're thinking that it would be better to be in a more recessive colour facing the water. And we were looking at how we could improve the vegetation around the foreshore, and making sure that that the heritage item remains prominent.
So I think, you're looking at.
This is
the
just
photo
looking at
montage
this,
we've
yeah.
prepared.
So can you?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, as you can see, and as you can see from the sections, we're not actually going any higher than the existing.
No,
roof line.
I appreciate
yeah.
that, because if you were doing a new build, you wouldn't be going that. It wouldn't be allowed to be that high anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yes, so then, in regard to sort of the sort of readings of how it sort of reads to the street, it is a little bit hard to see, but the base of the building is in sandstone.
yeah,
So similar to the property in this case on the right, it will have a sandstone base, and then the elements which are projecting forward are supposed to be sort of in a lightweight material. So so in that regard, it will
to
still
the water. The elements
Yes.
projecting forward to the water.
Yes,
Yeah. But the colour, have you?
So yes, we did. I think when you look along the whole area, then sort of there is a mix of sort of colours and everything like that. So but happy to. We did put on an alternative colour,
Cream.
yeah.
Not
So stark white, yes, exactly. So yeah. So so it isn't. It's not a stark white colour. It's.
I think the render's probably not doing he's probably not doing it any
Yes,
favors.
yeah.
Well,
So I mean, it really is a sort of a warmer.
is it that grey? Sorry.
Yes, so it's more sort of a
Green.
beigey sort of grey to sort of sit well with the
Right.
stone,
Yeah.
sandstone. So that's sort of the part of the thing. So yeah, so it's not
Yeah.
a dark white at all.
No.
So it's just the rendering that's.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. You guys,
Yes.
happy with that? You've got a copy of it.
I'm always in favour in Sydney sites like this of sort of some degree of warmth. Not just certainly not stark white, and that's not what you're proposing, but some degree of warmth, like the brick and stone. And you're going to some extent, you've got sandstone base on your walls.
Yeah.
And otherwise they're
And then we've also brought that sandstone around onto the street side as well.
Yeah.
Rather though, looking at the context that you're sitting in, you're presenting very much as a white building amongst, as Peter said, warmer coloured bricks and facades.
I suppose the render is probably not our most accurate of displaying the colours.
Colours,
So
yeah.
I think when it would sit in there, it would be probably less stark white.
Let's believe you
Yeah.
are going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think the issue for us is
Yeah.
that we're looking at the controls, and the controls are very clear about not having these kind of bright colours on the foreshore.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
saying it's okay is one thing, but us needing to respond to the controls is another.
So
So how do you feel about a warmer?
well, I think sort of so it was so going the thing is that we don't. Yes, we could put a warmer colour. Happy to do that, but I think really what we just don't. We want to make sure that we don't, therefore, sort of overstate the building as opposed to the sandstone. Because the sandstone is quite a sort of strong element, and so really it was sort of we prefer that the sandstone have sort of have a lot of the warmth, and then sort of I think it's the colour that we've selected. It's sits sort of complementary to those sandstone colours that are there.
Perhaps you could go for a colour that was more like sandstone rather than a white. Or
But then this is a sort of that when you start doing that, then it's sort of, it's the thing of the sandstone is one material and it has a colour, and then the building beyond, we don't want to be matchy on it. We prefer to just be complementary to it. I take what you're saying on board. We can look at sort of going a little bit warmer with the colour tone, but you know, that.
The other issue is the looking hard at this view from the water, which is the main issue that we're concerned about, obviously. Firstly, dealing with the materials and finishes the way you suggested. The other thing is a sort of a sheer 3-story on that section of the building. It could be modified at the top of this section. You've got a sort of veranda and timber posts and things there, haven't you? So the third level would appear so it's set back. And your image doesn't quite do justice to that, I don't think. But the other side, that also could be just articulated in materials that make it look as though it's just a little bit more set back from the main facade. I'm not talking about 10 metres or 2 metres or 1 metre, it's just a sort of a articulation, so, and a very minor setback maybe.
Well, understand what you're saying. So that alignment is, you know, we have sort of chosen a particular alignment rather than sort of having, you know, sort of something's, you know, just set slightly back, sort of anything like that. And that alignment is sort of based on it's the line of where the current veranda is. Up on the first floor, it is mainly windows up there, so it is a larger structure already. And then it sort of just follows down at that same line to the master bedroom. And then below, on the lower ground floor, it is then set back behind those, you know, the building line, the sandstone line is actually set back behind that. So
yeah.
it is a lighter, I suppose as you're sort of saying about our render, we've sort of tried to do the one which is, you know, sort of straight on to explain what sort of how the building is sitting in its context and everything like this. But again, it's that element is to read as a light element. It's I think the material change.
Look, that's understood, and I know you've worked hard, 99% of the way there, but despite what you've just said now, I still think that section, if it was just articulated and materials changed a little bit, so that top floor was just reads as though it's set back a bit and not like a 3-story wall. I don't know, the other panel members agree with that, or do you disagree with me?
No, I agree with you. Sensible.
I think the way that you've dealt with this half of the building is exactly right. This half is problematic in that the forward projection is lighter than the rest of the building, and it reads as 3 stories. So that's the only issue.
So
Like the planning, however, when you look at the plan, is difficult to achieve without fairly significant adjustment. If that's the master bedroom suite.
that is the master bedroom, but yes, and the you know the main living area above that.
Even the colouring you've used. So what's the colour of the render on this side of the building?
So the render colour is the
pebble dash.
yes. It is that.
It's all the same.
Yes, yes. So look,
You've shown them differently, but they're.
but it's because it's in shadow. So yeah. So it is the shadow casting across that.
Well, looking at the plan of that top level, I think there's plenty of scope to do a little bit of articulation, setback of the glazing line, or you know, a range of little measures that could be taken. That's a very minor.
to bring it back, leave it at the same level and bring the, like an awning out to give it shadow? Is that sort of you want it to be recessed?
Well, I think
Yeah.
that and a different colour or something.
Yeah,
If you can actually achieve a small setback, literally a setback of 300 millimeters or something as well, that all would be good. Because if you look in the image of the adjoining property to the properties on both sides, they don't read as 3 stories.
I'm sorry, I think that's, again, it's because of the way that the render is presented, that, if you look at the plan, that element is already.
Like before I said to a particular plan, so we know where we're doing that.
Actually, I think it might be better if I to the elevation on DA08.
Yeah, it's. Okay, yep.
So the area that we're talking about here, as you can see, so this is the eastern elevation. It is that line which is caught up as timber is that element on the right hand side. So it is already set back from the
All right.
the shading area and the outdoor area
So the,
on the left hand side.
that montage view doesn't do you justice. It's not really like that at all.
no.
Mhm.
Yeah, and those two, there's a timber and then behind is the masonry.
Masonry, yes.
So
yes.
it's sort of a timber on a
On the-
masonry.
So I think, so
it's
I feel that we have the articulation you're looking for in the drawing. That I just think that perhaps, as you say, our render's not doing us
just
not doing us justice, but sort of it's the. So I presume if we had done something from sort of on a link view, then you would have asked us to see one front on.
No, the render.
As I say, so the elevation shows the articulation that you're looking for.
The render is quite inaccurate, actually. I mean, the 3D view is quite inaccurate in the way that's presented.
the where it says timber or TIMB,
Yes, yeah,
is that referring to timber cladding?
yes, yes, yes.
So where it looks like that stark white, it's actually a timber clad.
Timber
Yes,
posts.
yes, yeah. Painted timber.
Painted timber.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So,
And that's set back from the element on the left.
That's correct. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
so panel colleagues, are we happy about it now that it's the slightly confusing drawings have been explained to us?
Oh, okay. And the painted finish is still a fairly light colour.
It'll work.
Yeah.
We can look.
Yeah.
Happy to condition
To look
be
at it.
about the colours, the paint colours.
Yeah, just being a more muted colour.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Just the question about the acer in the front, the Japanese maple, it's going to survive in that level of heat that it'll get.
I would have to refer back to the landscape architects who produced that, but they would not have suggested something that wouldn't.
It was changed in response to a council comment.
It
I
was.
believe.
To go the large tree, we
Yes.
meant it to be the large tree anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, can you explain?
They,
We're not aware.
originally, the landscape plan had a smaller version of a Japanese maple. It was meant to be a big one. We really loved the tree. We were trying to decide between that and the frangipani. So either way, frangipani might be more suitable from the weather conditions of the.
Yeah, I would think it would
And
be
I'm happy to
more
do that.
suitable.
Yeah.
But,
Bit of the French panel then so.
Well, really, the only specific recommendation we make is in relation to additional tree planting. I think we've ended up, if I'm right, colleagues, that we're not unhappy with the finishes and colours of the design of the building generally.
I think we should be asking for a change of the colour to be more recessive. I think the white that's proposed is too bright. It doesn't fulfil the objectives of the foreshore planning.
But that can be conditioned and
Yeah, just
and you
conditioned.
can
Yeah,
bring
yes,
that back
they
to
do.
council and
I'm
they
sure you can get
they can approve that.
Yes, yeah.
It still gives you the lightness that you want,
Yeah.
but with less, you know.
So the actual colour, or the colour they're recommending in the sample, not the sample sheet so much as that sheet is not stark white, it's a sort of a greyish white.
That's the render.
That's the
But there
render.
are painted sections, which is
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, the
sorry.
timber work,
very,
yeah, so we will, yes.
the painted section is this one, which is quite
Well, that
light.
is very white.
Yeah,
That's the painted section.
yeah.
Yeah, so we're recommending
Just this.
some greater warmth and
But we'll let you have a look at that to match in with your stonework,
Yes,
obviously.
yes, yes.
And come back with a proposal.
Mhm, yes, yeah, but as you said, as a condition,
Yeah.
in consent.
okay, so it's just that and the tree, and after that, I think we can leave the item. So that's clear enough from the point of view of the minutes.
So you. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
How misleading a render can be
Yes,
in a dream.
we want to get this one resolved.
This out of the way.
Do we want to finalise our decision on this now, or do you want to leave it till later?
For item one,
Yeah,
I think we can finalise it now, surely.
Yeah.
it is.
I think we're supportive, subject only, again, subject only to the,
the additional conditions of having a more recessive colour
yeah,
for the render and the paintwork facing the river.
I think
Yes.
just say paint scheme
Yeah.
rather than.
It
Okay.
doesn't need to come
Yeah,
back
things
here.
out.
No.
That should
No.
council satisfaction.
Yeah,
and the tree. Was it?
and the tree, if we want to go that far, and it's it's hard to know how, cost of a tree is nothing, it's $100. My sense is we should condition that.
Yeah.
If it fails because it gets inundated with salt water, well, so be it, but I think it sort of sets a precedent, I think,
Yeah.
and it makes a statement about these things are really important.
Yeah, and if we're trying to get a betterment, we're approving variations to the planning controls. Usually what we used to do anyway was agree with that if it was providing a betterment, if it was still outside the controls, but providing a betterment. And so I think, we can condition the tree as providing a betterment to the view from the water and improving the vegetation.
Okay.
Additional trees be planted.
Yeah, and well, I think we should specify an angle for a cost data, which I know has changed its name, it's now Corinne something, but they'll know what it means. Offer a cost data.
Yeah. Just in appropriate location in the backyard.
Yeah, I think
No, in the front, facing
on the water side.
waterfront.
And the frangipani to the front.
Yeah, on the lawn area.
So did you want the frangipani because it's a bigger tree than or you think it'll survive better?
One will survive, two,
Yeah.
it's more in context with what's around it. There were frangipanis dotted around.
Their front.
Japanese maple, I think, in our reflected heat area.
Yeah.
Better about
Yeah,
it.
no, it
Or
might
neighbourhood.
I would have done an olive,
Yeah,
An
that's
olive
what
would be-
an olive would be.
or a frangipani.
Yeah, give them options. They like olives.
And then did you also want us to delete those conditions about the easements for the pipes?
That would be
Okay, so my understanding was there were some conditions for easements for pipes under the property,
Oh, yes, so-
but that was an error. There actually are
Yeah.
no pipes under the property, so we just need to delete those
Okay,
conditions.
okay. Certainly support that recommendation.
Yeah.
Can we then move on to Fig Tree Park?
Yes. So, we were going to be able to have a presentation where they were going to walk us through in 3D and just show us, do we want to go ahead with that panel?
Yeah, can we have a bit of a chat about it first?
Yeah.
Sure.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Maybe you went there at the site visit, where I expressed some concerns, not so much about the design, which I do have some concerns about, but really about the process. And what troubles me is there seems to be a lack of clarity. When I read all the documents, there's been a grant of $4.5 million for this park. So that's happened on the one hand. On the other hand, at a previous planning panel that I happened to have sat on, there was approval was given, which I voted against, for the demolition of one of the houses that goes through to Gladesville Road. So that's happened on the other hand. There's this proposal to demolish, to remove 21 trees, but we have a design of the park, but we're not approving a design of the park. We're just dealing with the loss of 21 trees. So I have a concern about process in a way, is that these things seem to be being done in increments. We approve, this panel approved the demolition of a house. Now we're looking at the removal of 21 trees. We're looking at a scheme for the park, which is not before us. There are, in many of the objectors' notes, not in the documents from council, but in the objectors' notes, there were various references that I noticed to, the idea of a library and administrative council administrative centre. It just seemed to me that we're doing these things by increment without. I'm wondering, I suppose, whether there's a grander idea, a grander scheme that we don't know about. And so, and particularly when there's $4.5 million, I find it very hard to see how you can spend $4.5 million in that park. And if you did, you would ruin it completely, because $4.5 million is a lot of money to spend on soft landscaping. It's generally a soft landscape park. So I'm just troubled by knowing what the whole circumstance is for this whole patch of land, not just the Fig Tree Park, but the houses along which adjoin it along Gladesville Road. Is there some other plan that we're not being informed about? So that's not really dealing with the application itself, other than to say that my inclination would be to support the previous planning panel and refuse the application, not on the basis that was given previously. They gave all sorts of reasons why they, but on the basis that the lack of clarity about the long-term master planning of the park, the croquet lawn, and the buildings that adjoin them, which is perhaps slightly different way of thinking about it.
Yes, sure.
I echo Peter's concern, and I asked to look at the plan of management this morning, and in the 2 minutes I had a chance to look at it, and at the zoning plan. It seems that this is mostly Crown land in the care, control and management of council, and that in the planning scheme, and I'm not sure whether there's any later proposals, it's zoned commercially, the cottages. So you've got, there's the area, all of this I'm not sure what that one there is, but all of these are Crown land. And then when you look at the planning proposal, so council has a responsibility to look after it. And when you look at the town planning scheme, it tells you that all the cottages along that road are zoned commercially. All of this is medium rise. So contextually, there's a planning intent to redevelop this area significantly, not in a minor way, significantly, both with medium rise around it. So there's an expectation that people there will need more open space. But the fact that the fringe of the park is zoned commercially is kind of a little bit of a concern, because if there is a grander plan, I think it needs to be considered in context with any proposal for the park. And I think we need to understand from council what is the strategy behind their ownership of the land, their care, control and management, and their strategic planning going forward, and not just consider an application to remove trees in isolation.
I have to agree with that.
I think one of the consequences of now knowing that if that's commercial on there, and if there are proposals for developed, or potentially it could be developed, then you would be looking at this park and saying there's a possibility for commercial development which fronts onto the park, and therefore it might take on a more urban and urbane quality, and I can understand why that might be. Whereas all of the objectives seem to talk about it as a very soft green space, and they're worried that it's being compromised. But there might be a reason why you might compromise it if you're going for a much more urban development, commercial development around it that might have cafes and so on opening onto the park. So I think that just further demonstrates to me that there's something that doesn't sit comfortably with me about the application, which is only asking us to remove 21 trees, not to consider anything else.
We have the set of plans which show a nature play area,
But that's not what we're being asked to,
no, this is
to approve.
no, there's accessible toilet and baby change station, and I just couldn't get my head around. That's it's an additional building on the side. So.
And the council officers able to provide us any further information about whether there is an approved plan of management? Is this plan for the park approved by council? Or is this just a proposal before council? How are you able to provide us any more information about the park?
I mean, the park is just basically as it is, there's no proposal for it.
Is this proposal?
There was a grant given for 4.5 million. So there must have been some application that sets out some idea of what that was going to be used for. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my issue, Peter, is that we're being asked to do 21 trees, and that's one thing, but what is the whole framework for the removal of these 21 trees, and why does it have to be dealt with now without knowing the full story of what's being proposed? And even, if this park proposal came with it and it said, well, we want to remove 21 trees to build this park, well, that's a different issue. But this plan has no status, as I understand it. It's just a concept design. So it's a procedural issue, I guess, is my real concern.
I had great difficulty getting my mind around exactly what it was, what this was, and it's nothing to do with what we're being asked to look at today or to approve today. I mean, if there's any danger with the trees with branches falling, obviously that's another matter. That's if a tree needs removal because of its danger, that council just gets on and does that anyway.
Yeah.
That's the other issue, is that this LEP is 10 years old. Is there any forward planning around, is this LEP due for review or?
Yeah, we do.
And where are you
right now. So we started the initial stages of it, LEP. Station and also all the stakeholders and also legal department involved there. Other parts of the community here. Trust.
Right, and what's the timing for that?
At the moment, we're saying, like say, maybe October at the moment, but
For what?
or basically getting it there in terms of
A new plan?
exhibition.
Right.
Take a while for us to update it and strengthen.
So you have a draft now that you're consulting on?
No, it
No.
hasn't even got
Do
to
we
that
have
stage.
community engagement even?
All right.
By aligning, so
Right.
the strategic planner has gone away to think about how big this project could be or
Ah.
how it's supposed
Right.
at that point.
So yeah, so our strategic planning departments at the moment working with the community. Stakeholders.
Okay, we better move on because we've got less out of my mind, but there's quite a number of them. People who want to present. The mayor is a supporter. There's a 3 consultants who wants to make a 3-minute government presentation.
I want to give you my declaration of conflict, please.
Yes.
That's in relation to
Helen Temple, James Salter, and that my husband is on the cat.
the,
The Heritage Committee, what's it called?
Conservation Advisory.
Conservation Advisory Committee.
oh,
I don't believe that any of those is a problem in my decision making today.
there's no conflict of interest, I thought.
I have to formally declare it so that it's noted.
Thank you for that, but I think as chairman and so there's no perceived conflict of interest in that declaration. Shall I pass that over to
Thank you.
Might be second because it's personal.
Okay.
Okay, we have 7 presentations or there's 4 objectives at the bottom. There's a supporter, there's a designer, 2 supporters. Okay, how do we deal with this? The applicants appearing on the screen or turning up?
No, so they're all out.
They're all out.
We're waiting.
Writing.
Can we all?
So
Invite them all
normally,
in and then they'll
Yeah, I don't see why they should all be invited in. There's nothing
no,
secret about any of the presentations, presume.
okay.
And the person, Matt Phillips, who wrote the report, he can be.
Okay,
Unfortunately, wasn't it?
he's an independent consultant or
Yeah,
that sort of stuff. Okay.
So the first people will give us a presentation.
not ask Sarah to ask.
Yes.
Applicants to just.
Yeah,
just-
yeah.
The seat and then the chair will. Yes.
So welcome to our visitors. I'm Peter Webber, the chair of the panel today. My 2 colleagues on the panel, Sheridan Burke, Peter Watts, and
Meredith Shield,
chair.
the community representative.
Community rep, yeah. Meredith. So we have 7 people listed to talk to us or make a presentation. The mayor, take miles to start with, and I'll just read out. Presumably, visitors have got a note already of the order of presentation. The way it reads to us is the mayor first, and Hopwood Tree Consultant, Ryan Aldrich, Consultant Designer, David Salter, Councillor Ross Williams, Maureen Flowers and Mel Marlock, 4 objectors. So I guess we have the presentations in that order. And I invite the Mayor, Zach Miles, to talk with us.
Well,
As a supporter.
yes, very much so. Thank you for the opportunity to address the panel today. As Mayor of Hunters Hill, I'm proud to be representing council and the community in speaking to you about the review application. A review application that, if approved, will pave the way for a project that provides huge public benefit and amenity to Hunters Hillians for generations to come. A review application that has comprehensively responded to all of the reasons for refusal and additional concerns from the LPP meeting on the 19th of December 2022. Fundamentally, councils are charged with improving services and facilities to residents and ratepayers. The Fig Tree Park project is a prime example of this. Council was awarded a $4.7 million state government grant for this project, and council, in a unanimous decision, resolved to accept the grant for this project. Delivery will provide a fit-for-purpose green space in the heart of Hunters Hill, with public amenities, improved access, and inclusive playground, planting, and a significant improvement in the usability and beautification of the park. The 25 submissions expressing objections to the review application are small in the context of our population of 14,000. I'd like to point out that the significant number of these submissions included comments in relation to matters such as the proposed landscaping, lighting, location of amenities block, playground, fencing, paths, and underground services routes. To clarify, these matters are not under consideration as part of this review application, and respectfully, the panel should disregard any comments in relation to these in making a determination. What I can say is that these aspects of the proposed works have been designed by experts in their respective fields, and council's done an enormous amount of work in making sure that all of those issues are covered, and we've got some of those experts here to talk to you today. Our community has expressed a resounding interest in the revitalisation of Fig Tree Park, with more than 1,500 submissions captured online through emails, in meetings, and at a citizens panel. So 1,500 submissions were made, and the vast bulk of those were in support. And that was a part of a comprehensive multi-phase consultation process that made up the beginning of the throes of this park. The majority of these respondents expressed positive sentiment towards the project. The park's main stakeholder, the Hunters Hill Croquet Club, is also supportive of the project. I will also note the councillors Richard Quinn, Deputy Mayor Elizabeth Crassoy, Councillor Tatiana Vergara, Councillor Prieston, and myself also supported both the initial DA, the DA that submitted, and this review. I might, and I say that because the local planning panel in September 2022 approved a development application related to this project for the demolition of the dwelling and associated outbuildings at 48 Gladesville Road. In the review application before the panel today, if the review application before the panel today is not supported, it will seriously jeopardise the ability of the Fig Tree Park revitalisation project to go ahead. You will hear from subject matter experts, including the independent arborist, regarding the evidence base that informs the recommendation for approval in this review application. We are committed to working with all stakeholders in this process, including the local planning panel, as the review application before you demonstrates. And we are committed to delivering the best possible outcome for this park. An approval of this review application would ensure that this is delivered for the community of Hunters Hill into the future. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mayor. I must make quite clear that the recommendation for what this panel is being asked to look at today is simply for the removal of 21 trees and pruning of 7 trees. That's the extent of our involvement today. We've had no involvement with the planning of the park. We've been given a plan showing the general concept. So it's a little difficult to approve removal without knowing more about the overall strategy and development plan for the park. I'll just make that comment now. Does the panel have any questions for the Mayor, or shall we move on to other speakers?
No, perhaps can I just ask, you say the denial of this today, I think your words you used were will seriously impact the ability. Is that really the case? When it's just 21 trees, it's got nothing to do with the design of the park or any other intent.
With respect, it does have a lot to do with the capacity of us to deliver the park because of service lines within the bounds of the park, the required drainage, and we've planned, and I'm sure that the project manager can speak to this more, but the drainage plan that's been developed around the significant trees and around the amenities blocks and where we'd actually have to put the services, absolutely. This application has huge impacts on how we're going to be able to deliver this park. But I would also add that an independent arborist has not only recommended approval for this plan, but has also approved without amendment our replanting schedule, which will deliver a better tree canopy in the park than there is at the moment. So you're removing sick bottle brushes, plants that are poorly formed. You are replacing that with trees that will be fully formed and actually have a better public benefit because there'll be more tree canopy within the bounds of the park. We're increasing the green space by virtue of the fact of the DA that occurred some time ago for the removal of the cottage of 48 Gladesville Road. So that the removal of that essentially increases the green space in the park. But I think it's important to note that the tree canopy will improve as a result of the independent arborist's advice of removing sickened and ill-formed trees and replanting the replanting schedule of trees that will actually develop in time into a better public outcome in tree canopy. But you know, the drainage in that park is really essential because even minor rains, that turns into an absolute quagmire.
Okay, can I ask a further question then? With the grant that was $4.7 million, was there a proposal that went forward with that grant that showed what the park was to be, or was it just $4.7 million to fix up the park? No,
there were in the schedule for the grant, which was again unanimously supported by the council of the day. There were as I understand it, a list of works, including the removal of the cottage, including pathways and lighting for accessibility, including a public plaza from Gladesville Road into Fig Tree Park and the amenities block and the play space.
So there was a design.
No, there was a list. There was a list of items that need to be included in the revitalisation of the park. Yeah.
And the council itself put the $4.7 million against that list of
yes.
things. Okay.
Yep. And I mean, we're not unfortunately due to materials costs and the like, we have over time had to pare that back a little bit because we're not going to get any change out of 4.7. It's actually going to be quite close to the mark. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I think the thing that we're struggling with, and it seems to be the same issue that the panel dealt with last time, Zach, is you seem to have an understanding of the concept design for the park. And the buildings, the community buildings along there. We've been given a concept design here, but it sounds like there should be a DA for the whole development that included, you know, removing houses, putting in drainage, fencing, removing trees as a whole. That could possibly come to the panel, so that all those things could be decided on in context. What seems to be happening is that they're just coming piecemeal And it's very difficult for the panel to make decisions on that when they don't have, there's no grounding.
Yep.
So is there an approved plan for the park and the community buildings along it, a council approved plan, or are we just working off a concept design?
So there is an approved plan for the design of the park. I would say, and there are obviously some pretty eminent planning experts around the table, but all of the associated works that you're talking about are exempt development. They're all exempt development because this is a public park, and we would lodge DAs, and it was always the case. The advice was very clear to us that we would lodge DAs for the removal of the house, which was a requirement, and we would lodge DAs for the removal of trees, which is a requirement. All the other works you're talking about, we wouldn't lodge a DA to do drainage works at Boronia Park. We wouldn't lodge DA works to do any of the core works that you would imagine are associated with a piece of a public park. So I can say that there is a plan adopted by council for the whole park. There is an approval for the removal of the cottage at 48 Gladesville Road, and our clear advice from the planning team was that we would get an independent expert arborist to do an assessment and lodge a DA on the removal of trees because it is a requirement.
So is the plan that is approved by council this concept plan that we have?
Yes.
Yeah.
A series of detailed drawings indicating various views and details of trees to be, and that sheet, for example, shows trees to be removed. So it's presumably that concept plan is what council now wants to implement step by step.
Yes, and that's been through council.
And so the only the items within that plan, approved plan, that need DA approval are the house and the
So the house has been approved by this panel.
Yes.
It has been approved already. So major works on that portion of the project are being held over until the decision is being made today about the trees. The advice that I understand we took at the time is that there are exempt development components to the project, and the two elements of the project that required DA approval by the LPP were the removal of 48 Gladesville Road, tick, done, approved, and for the removal of trees. And the independent arborist has recommended approval for the removal of these trees because in the long run, the public benefit in doing that is significant.
Okay.
I don't think that we've been given the tree replacement
Schedule.
either.
You should have. There is an endorsed replanting schedule by the independent arborist,
Okay.
and that was passed without amendment too.
Right.
So I think that we're talking about given it is called Fig Tree Park, the retention of the fig trees. I think there are other replacement fig trees that we're looking to put over the pathways. We've gone even in, and I'm probably not the best person to get into the detail of that. The project manager is here. He will be able to walk you through his expert advice. We've even gone down to the detail of resourcing permeable pathways and things, so that water will be able to go, like they're not concrete pathways, they're all environmentally friendly. So this is a really good public project that I think deserves the support of the panel.
Thanks.
I have some questions.
Mhm.
We've just been given a plan of management this morning.
Mhm.
As I understand it, this is all Crown land.
Yes.
And the zonings around the land are for medium density in this immediate vicinity. And the area from the freeway up to the end of the park is zoned commercially. So all of those properties that are currently in care, control and management of council are commercially zoned.
Yes.
Clearly, there's an intention that this will be a more intense residential environment and that this will become a more intense commercial environment. Surely that needs to be taken into account when planning the context for the park.
Mhm.
And what I'm not seeing is any strategic context in which these decisions are being made. We're being asked to look at one thing, then another thing.
That was the advice of our expert planners, that the only two elements of the park so the exempt development is the business of council. The two DAs that we've lodged, the removal of 48 Glasgow Road and the tree DA are for the panel to make their deliberations on. I would argue that the R3 zones that abut the surrounds of the park have already been developed. They are already medium density. Some of them are. Those have been recently developed. And the business zoning that abuts Gladesville Road on the back of the park, that is essentially our business core, and the concept for council has always been, as that's a really important bookend to the village, we want to have the capacity for people to make the park as usable and user friendly as possible. So you go to the cafe, you get your cup of coffee, you get your newspaper, newsagent, you go and sit in the new bench seating up through the park. You don't have to walk up the arterial road where it's ugly and awful. And yes.
I'm very fond of the cafe up there. But the issue I'm trying to get at is that strategically, we're not seeing a concept that is working within I presume, the strategic planning that you're trying to achieve here. So we're not looking at how these areas will be developed and how they will look onto the park. We're just looking at.
But there's no proposal for that development.
Well, there's an intention.
There's perhaps, but that would be a matter for Crown Lands, because they are the owners of those properties. We don't have care, control, and management of those properties. Just to be clear, we had that they are Crown Land owned and managed. The only council resource, the only council owned building in that whole row of houses is 48 Gladesville Road, the property that is proposed approved, I should say, for demolition. The rest of those cottages are Crown Land.
Yeah, okay. There's Crown Land, but you are care, control, and management.
No, we have ownership of one. But that's a document for Crown Land. That's a plan of management, a Crown Land plan of management.
And no, this is for council.
The council lodged plan of management that has to be approved by Crown Lands.
It hasn't been. Is that what you're telling us?
Oh, it has. Yeah, that's been through and is approved.
Okay. So this is the context, the strategic planning context.
Mm-hmm.
But what we are being asked to do is just look at the removal of trees, not to consider how it will be dealt with in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no proposal for those. Yeah, but that doesn't. If you look at the concept plan, there are no proposals for the corner of Matthew and Glasgow Road. They remain untouched.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yes. You're saying that you would like to see them developed.
I'd like to understand the strategic context in which you are planning to remove the trees, and I'm not getting at vision.
Well, the trees that are slated for removal are all within the approved plans that you've got in front of you, within the bounds of the approved plans.
Okay, we're going to move on as we've got quite a number of submissions to listen to. The second listed speaker is Anna Hopwood, the tree consultant.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Do we have a list? Do we have the replacement tree plan? Have you? Am I missing it?
Could I ask the tree consultant? So this is a 3-minute presentation.
Good morning. I am Anna Hopwood from Tree IQ, and I've been the project arborist involved in the project for the last year or so. I'll be quite quick because I already have 3 minutes. In summary, there is 17 trees which are prescribed by council's tree controls to be removed. 3 of those are for the upgrade works, and 14 of those we are removing because they are low quality species or weed species. When we do upgrade works in parks, we generally try and look at the low quality trees, the weed species, those trees which are in poor health or have structural defects, or those that might be inappropriately located. At the park, there is a number of trees which have been planted right underneath the canopy of larger trees. Those trees will never develop into great specimens, and there will be ongoing conflict with the branches as they clash with the larger trees, which council will need to deal with. So I'll just go quickly through the trees which are going. We've got trees 5 and 16, which are both planted under the crown of larger trees. Tree 5 is going for the footpath. We've got trees 25 to 28, which we are removing because of significant structural defects. Trees 35 and 36 are going because they have a short lifespan. Tree 39 needs to be removed because we're doing some grading works in that corner for the footpath onto Matthew Street. And tree 40 is also being removed because it has a short lifespan. All of these trees, their retention value is considered for removal or priority removal based on arboricultural best practice. Sorry. We've got tree 53, which is also under the crown of the larger eucalypt, and again won't ever develop into a good quality tree. It also has a structural defect at the base. Trees 61 and 63 are the small shrub-like trees which sit under the crown of the fig tree. The fig tree is to be retained. Tree 67 has a short lifespan, and tree 78 is a weed species. Thanks, Sarah. These are the 2 trees which do meet the criteria for consider for retention. Tree 41 has a significant structural defect, and council will have to deal with that irrespective of the upgrade works. And we have got tree 58, which we did work quite hard to try and retain. However, it is located next door to the silky oak, which is probably considered the oldest and most significant tree on site. So we try to push any grading works as far away from the silky oak as possible, and that tree 58 sits at the pinch point with the other tree on the other side. Thanks, Sarah. So in total, there's 76 trees to be retained. Thanks, Sarah. When we're looking at the impacts of the trees which are being retained in regards to the works, we use an Australian standard protection of trees on development sites. The standard has 2 zones, the tree protection zone and the structural root zone. The tree protection zone is the area which keeps the tree alive, and the structural root zone is really what keeps the tree upright. The standard does allow for works within the tree protection zone. There's a minor encroachment, which is less than 10% of the TPZ, and that is considered acceptable by the standard. And we've got a major encroachment, which is over 10% of the TPZ, and the project arborist must outline that the tree can remain viable with consideration to a number of factors listed in the standard. For the purpose of this project, we have used design factors, and we have any works which are greater than 10% of the TPZ are being designed to retain tree roots so that the trees are not adversely impacted. Thanks, Sarah. Just taking you through a number of these tree sensitive methods that I've used on previous projects. Here we have the installation of screw piles and then concrete piers. Both can be installed so we avoid large tree roots. This is above grade pathways where we don't excavate. The footpath surface is above grade, which means we can retain roots underneath the pavement surface. Again, Hyde Park we've used the same methods. And this is how we install underground services within tree protection zones, where we essentially insert the pipework or the conduits underneath large tree roots. That's my presentation. I just want to finish by saying that I have gone through the plans really closely to make sure that the trees that are being retained are, will not be adversely impacted by the works.
Thank you very much, Anna. I think we better move on. Unless there's any critical questions now, I think we better move on to the other speakers. So we don't want to be here all the afternoon. So Ryan Aldrich was, according to our agenda, will also have a 3-minute 3D walkthrough.
Thank you. I'll just put the laptop up here.
Brian, you're a consultant designer. Were you involved with the design of this proposal or not?
Yes, I work for Scott Carter and we were appointed by council to provide landscape architectural
I
services.
want to be quite clear. Thank you.
Victory Park.
Thank you.
So I'm just getting the technology to beam up onto the screen and then I'll start my. Share screen. Okay, I'll start my presentation. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share an indicative 3D walkthrough showcasing the design of the park. We're going to start at apologies, just waiting for the IT is not quite working. Apologies for that. Sorry. Yes, is it possible to do it locally without sharing it through Zoom? And then I think it will broadcast.
Sorry.
Would it be okay for everyone else?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I was thinking the same thing. So
Apologies about that one. We did test it this morning and something.
so we have 4 objectives listed to speak. Is that the idea? David Salter first.
Thank you. Council persists with the fiction that they received an application for review, but we all know it's the council themselves who are challenging the finding made by the independent local planning panel. They didn't like the umpire's decision, so now they want you to change your minds. The general manager's covering letter and attachments are largely devoted to attempts by council to discredit or to sidestep the reasoning that supported the panel's original decision. Where their scheme had obvious flaws, they now propose minor changes, or they tried to deny there was ever a problem by just saying they disagree. Well, they might disagree, but that doesn't change the facts. The fact that this project has already been through so many versions, that's proof it was never a practical or appropriate development. The fact that the community continues to object so strongly, that's equal proof that it's a development we don't need or want. In effect, the council would have us believe that the hypothetical benefits of their scheme should be valued above the actual loss of more than 20 trees and the disruption of a well-established public space. The panel's original decision was that the proposed loss of those trees was not justified. They were right, and nothing substantial has changed. They were not misled. They did not overlook or ignore significant information. They did not exceed their authority. And despite what council might claim, this has never been a matter of public amenity. It's politics. The local member and his supporters were happy to take the credit while announcing the grant. Now, with the project under proper scrutiny, they fear an embarrassing loss of face. That's why council has spent countless thousands of dollars on consultants trying to make their flawed scheme fly. Any sensible managers of such a debacle would have cut their losses long ago, but not this council. It seems they can't accept an independent ruling, even when community sentiment is so clearly against them. But the delays have given us time to examine the supporting documents in more detail, and there are some aspects we think might help you in your deliberations here today. If you turn to sheet 1 of the Scott Carver General Arrangement Plan, please take a look at the bottom left of that sheet. It shows a pathway and sandstone wall as part of an entrance. An entrance to what, you might ask? It's an entrance, and I quote from the plan, to future development. There are similar notations at every other corner of the park plan. That's what this is really all about, future development. Council sees the Fig Tree Park project as just a stepping stone towards their dreams of a vast commercial development all the way down Gladesville Road to Matthew Street. It's part of their published property strategy. That's why they're so determined to get rid of these trees. And that's also why the proposed toilet block has been moved from its first site near the village shops to the bizarre new position halfway up Ryde Road. The reasons council now give for that change are specious. All the necessary services, water, sewerage and power, are already available at the site of number 48 Gladesville Road. As recently as 2 nights ago, at the public meeting here in the town hall, the council's own strategic planner assured us that the primary purpose of the LEP was to, and I quote, preserve the garden suburb character of Hunters Hill. Needless to say, he didn't mention Fig Tree Park. But to us, the residents and ratepayers, the most telling aspect of this whole saga is that our own council, after 2 years, still cannot mount a rational case in support of their own scheme, nor will they admit to the clear connections it has with their much larger development ambitions. In that context, it's worth noting that the original grant application made no specific mention of the loss of trees, nor did the consultation process that followed. In fact, the council claimed that the green canopy would be increased by 10%. To me, that borders on willful misrepresentation, almost deceit. But that's just a detail. You may find that the latest submission meets some of your initial concerns. It's very professionally done, but that's just detail and a deliberate diversion. It does nothing to answer the fundamental question: why should this much-loved little park be so radically disturbed? The first panel hearing concluded that to destroy the trees and by implication to allow the overdevelopment that would be made possible by those removals was not in the public interest. We can see no reasonable basis for this panel to reverse that decision. Thank you.
Any questions? If not, we can move to the next registered speaker. Who was
Ross Williams.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Ross Williams. A couple of observations I'd like to make up front is that there is a broader planning concept for that precinct. And as mentioned, it has been debated in the community infrastructure planning process. It seems to be a bit of a contradiction between what the mayor is saying and what is actually happening at this panel. He's saying that this is solely about the trees. It's about nothing else. But even in his presentation, he talks about other things. And we're going to see a very high quality video in a moment, if they can get their technology working, that talks more about other things rather than the trees. Council, I believe, should have put forward a complete package, and a package that highlighted the context and the impact on that context. We don't have DAs for the other items, the infrastructure items. Morally, I believe council should do that. Legally, it probably doesn't have to, but in fairness to the community and community concerns, it should have done it. So I believe what you're looking at here is a piecemeal approach. Even the demolition of the house on Gladesville Road is not part of the park. It is council-owned land. What will happen to that as time goes on, who knows when they develop Gladesville Road, because it's not part of the park. Anyway, I quite openly and proudly have opposed this project, and I think it should have gone back to council once it was rejected by the panel, because one of the key rejection points, not in the public interest. I believe that any responsible council should have seen that and taken it back and have it debated at the council meeting as to whether they wish to abide by the umpire's decision or challenge it. The panel made a clear determination that this was not in the public interest. Council should be the model applicant in every aspect and should accept the umpire's decision. Council's request for the review process has no substantive or credible information that changes the position that the panel was last faced with. Council still wants to remove 21 trees and rip them out. In fact, just this week, and it was referred to by the previous speaker, that council had a community meeting or public meeting on the LEP DCP process, review process. And in that, it was very clear the community wants to maintain and protect its tree cover, and council should be the model for doing that. It also, fortunately or fortuitously, during the last week, because of the LEP DCP review, several of council's committees, the Conservation Advisory Panel, the Sustainability Committee, Advisory Committee, and the Bushland Advisory Committee all reinforced the view of this garden municipality and its tree canopy should be maintained. And for council to be requiring the removal of 21 trees or requesting the removal of 21 trees without the context of them being put in place. There's also been, during this long and protracted process, significant and continual community objections. They soundly reject the proposal. So why does council work? Why is council working to a budget rather than a community need on this project? It is an obscene amount of money that council is spending on a small park, $4.75 million. The park itself is made up of several components. The trees are only on a small part of that park. You've got a couple of buildings and you've got the croquet lawn. So the actual site that we're talking about is no more than several tennis courts.
It is interesting to note the grant promise that would increase the tree cover by 10%. But what is proposed is utterly the opposite, removal of 21 trees in the oldest garden municipality. What example does this set for our community and future applicants? This area of the park is fit for purpose, an exquisite place for relaxation and reflection. We have a diverse community and council should cater for the inclusion and diversity. Not all parks need to be paved over or used for active sport. The proposal will destroy the attributes of this park and its value to the community. Much is placed on the arborist report. The report does not highlight any safety hazards, but a series of assessment of individual trees, ignoring their collective value and community context. In many instances, their removal is to allow for the siting of infrastructure and paths. In any healthy ecosystem, you need a diverse range of age, condition, and species, etc. And with humans, we age with dignity, although we are not pristine in condition. But we provide an important value to our community. As these trees are not all in pristine condition, but they provide a unique and an important niche in the ecosystem to deliver biodiversity and amenity. Trees don't have to be perfect to be of great value. You cannot underestimate the biodiversity and climate change resilience of this tree area, and I'm sure you have had a look at it. It's green, beautiful, calm, and cool. There are even some endangered species trees to be removed. I personally walk through the park regularly, and just yesterday the park was hosting a range of cockatoos and a lot of small brown birds, which depend on those shrubby type or lower canopy cover. We've heard that you've got to remove them because they're overshadowed by another tree, but they do provide an important habitat. Equally, and in recent times, I've seen a powerful owl in there. Equally importantly, enormous relief from the searing heat of the day. Yesterday was a very hot day. People were in there having lunch under the trees and stretching out and relaxing on the lawn under the shade. It's vital that we maintain our trees and our canopy cover as we go into and become more climate resilient. Council's recent biodiversity strategy highlighted the importance of oases like these, such as this park, in providing dense, diverse habitat and connectivity as part of the network of corridors for flora and fauna. I employ the panel to reaffirm its decision that this application is not in the public interest and reject the review application.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay.
That's all.
Now, who's speaking next?
Have we fixed up the presentation?
Working again.
Oh, thank you.
I think we might have missed.
Thank you for entertaining the reversal order of the speakers. I'll begin my presentation and take us on a walkthrough of the proposed design for Victory Park. Our engagement has only been for the park that we're showing you. The cottages and other things that have recently been mentioned is not part of our remit. We haven't produced plans for only looking at this. I'll start by walking from 48 Gladesville, where the cottage currently is, through an entrance plaza. This is a green, it's a leafy, it's an open space. There's plenty of garden beds with planting. As we come to the junction into Victory Park, there is a large silky oak tree, and the pathways have been positioned to give that plenty of space to continue to the one tree has been removed where I currently stand to facilitate this connection. We arrive at a picnic seating area that is under some of the larger trees within the park. It's a shady, nice place to sit down and enjoy the parkland. As we continue further into the park, we'll spot a playground area to our left. This has been designed in a way that it works amongst the existing pin oaks and trees in that area. There are no trees being removed for this works. The pathways that we're travelling along at the moment are built of a pervious surface, allowing the water to go through into the park. There's an amenities building located next to Ryde Road. Its installation does not affect any of the trees. There are no trees removed for this building. As we go further into the park, we approach what we call the village green. It's open, it's leafy, it's green. And we'll notice we're planting significant garden beds all around the edges of the park. This is one of the main components of the upgrade or embellishment works. We want to create a connection into the croquet lawn and extend the openness of the park. Some trees are being removed in this area. They are of a poor arboricultural quality. As we continue walking around the path, those network of walkways provides for an equitable access into the park. In the middle of winter, it can get bogged down. It provides a far better way to navigate. Garden beds are planted throughout. It weaves through some of the existing trees. Where we're currently standing, one tree has been proposed for removal to facilitate this works. However, the path, it's a pinch point and it's been located to avoid two significant trees or large established trees in the area. As we come to the north of the park, we'll see various seatings. These are to future development, let's call it. So that term is referring to the exact details of how it's going to be constructed are subject to future design. However, we have not been engaged to by path networks to future buildings. That has not been our remit. At the north of the park, we can look back through it and we can see that intent is to maintain a green, leafy, open space. In the heart of the village green, we want to install a large, significant fig tree to give the name back to the park. And we propose that comes in at a, let's call it an instant size, one of the larger sizes that you can crane into the site. As with all the trees that we have been proposing for replacement planting, you'll know that the sizes are quite significant. I believe that's my 3 minutes that I've spoken to.
Thank you. I think they're a long 3 minutes. Thank you very much. There are no questions.
I have just one question, Alistair. Can you tell me what's happening to the memorial at the park? Little standing stones there.
As part of the current design that has been removed.
And what's the significance of it?
That was
I can assist if the chair
that was donated by Rotary, and there's been consultation with Rotary.
Yes, we've consulted with Rotary. Rotary has paid for its installation, and Rotary are happy with. I believe it's being moved to a different part of the site.
And what is its significance?
It used to be a fountain, so it's not.
Fountain.
It used
Is
to
it
be
a Pistol City thing or something? What was its purpose?
Rotary is installed.
That is not necessarily an accurate view on.
The president of Rotary.
I've also submitted as the president of Rotary.
Okay, I think we should move on. It's time to go away from us. We have 3 further objectors listed. Maureen Flowers.
Hello, thanks very much. Let's bring this up. I must admit I was puzzled by Council's request for a review of the previous panel's determination, as it appears to be at odds with their stated intention to strengthen their own policies to counteract the loss of trees in our suburb. And again, even at Wednesday's meeting for the local environment plan, council's intention was to improve landscaping rules for homeowners in order to retain and enhance the garden suburb of Hunters Hill. At the same time, however, it appears they're quite prepared to remove 21 trees from a garden park. It's seemingly a question of do as I say rather than do as I do. In their detailed submission to the LPP, council have confirmed that the current designs locations for both the playground and the amenities building have been revised to ensure that no trees are required to be removed for these two key features in the park. The arborists have also stated that the works to rectify drainage issues will be carried out so as not to affect existing trees. So this begs the question, if the major infrastructure works are unaffected by the presence of the trees, what is the justification for removing them? Even the arborists themselves appeared, and what I would like to say is that the community generally is not against an upgrade. This is important. We would like to have all of the little features that are being proposed, fencing, etc., but not at the expense of the trees. Even the arborists appear to have been undecided because originally on the first application, a tree marked as priority for removal is now being left, and trees that were not under threat previously are to be cut down. Some tree removals are apparently because they have a fair structural condition, although in good health. But this same category has also been given to 12 other trees in the park that are not being removed. So this reasoning doesn't seem to add up. The category of low landscape significance is also questionable, as removing any trees that provide good bird habitat and vital shade in a rapidly heating climate is very significant indeed. Some of the trees being removed are perfectly positioned to provide shade for new seating, which will now be left in full sun. There's 14 trees being taken from this corner that was shown as having seating. And that is always a beautiful shady spot. So it's a bit of a worry as to what that would end up as. So we know that there are 3 large trees, all structurally sound and in good health, that are being cut down simply because they're in the way of proposed paths. And this one is one of the main ones as well. It's a paper bark. With such generous project funding, I would expect that it would be perfectly possible to explore alternative pathway alterations or options, as was given the above ground pathways maybe. So there's also no mention of the many middle and story bushes, lower story bushes and shrubs around the perimeter. These are wonderful because they give the park its unique garden character and charm, and they protect it from traffic. And it seems as though these are also going to be just swept away and small lamandras or something put in their place in a push for a sanitized space. The interesting fact is that the economic benefits of retaining trees is now measured, and a 10% increase in tree canopy has been shown to increase property values by an average of $50,000. So reducing our tree canopy anywhere in the suburb is not in the best interests of the community. Finally, with such a substantial budget, council could afford the very best of care for these long neglected trees, particularly the ones that are endangered in the wild and do have some damage. And they need to be pruned, cared for, but not removed. This is to ensure they retain their natural amenity for the community. Residents expect council to set a high standard in terms of the tree conservation, but this DA does the opposite. Therefore, I'd like to suggest that as convincing evidence for the scale of tree removal has not been provided, the previous well-considered decision of the panel that this DA is not in the public interest is upheld.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker we have listed is Mel Marlock from the Hunters, representing the Hunters Hill Trust.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Alistair Sharp, the president of the Hunters Hill Trust. The council's request for a review of this DA runs to 58 pages. The supporting documents add another 100 pages or more. There are endless drawings and plans and even a 3D walkthrough video. Frankly, it's an embarrassment to think of the colossal amount of consultant time and money that has already been spent on generating this material. And all this without submitting properly formulated infrastructure plans or sufficient justifications for tree removals to the previous panel. By its exhaustive pursuit of detail, the council tries to ignore the real issue. Their plan is to turn the park into a site that is not constrained by the presence of inconvenient trees and which can be easily absorbed into future commercial development. We understand that, strictly speaking, the panel should confine itself to the specifics of council's application, but the park belongs to the community, not to council. So in our view, a genuine assessment of the public interest must consider any loss of trees in relation to the existing amenity of the park, which is well-loved garden park, providing a shady oasis for all ages with a full range of trees giving autumn colour and filtered winter sun. Council has already committed in the Fig Tree Park Plan of Management to retain and maintain all existing trees, and in addition, I quote, to increasing the green canopy of the park by a minimum of 10%. And this was stated in their grant application. This same council now claims that trees should be removed to improve sightlines or to make way for unbuilt paths that any skilled designer could creatively weave around existing trees while still keeping the village green. You will have noted from their written objections that the community is united in its resolve to resist any development of the park that involves the removal of trees. The Trust did not need to drum up that opposition. It has been spontaneous and sustained. The Mayor has said council doesn't need approval to build in the park because it's public land. That may be true, but public land is community land, and the community and the independent planning panel have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had David Salter. I think that covers the list of registered speakers. So I think we can move on to a discussion. Does the panel want to do this in public or in private?
I'd just like to ask one further question, if I may. The Mayor mentioned that the plans have been approved, and we have plans that have multiplicity of dates on them. Can you tell me what exactly the plan that's been approved is? These ones seem to be February 23.
We've got the project manager here, so I might. So this.
My question is simply, which of the plans that have been approved? That's all.
All of the plans that you have in front of you have been prepared by Scott Carver, and they have been issued for tender to the tenderers. So that is the current set of documentation that you have in front of you. As a set of drawings, obviously some of those plans change, including as a result of the review that we undertook. So there are different revision dates on some of the drawings.
So what's the answer to my question? When were they approved by the council? That's my question.
I can get the date. They've been to a council for resolution. They have been resolved through council.
Okay, so if we could find that out, that would be
Okay,
great.
sure. Thank you.
So the current proposal is entirely consistent with the approved plans.
Yes, that's right.
Must vary them though, because there's more.
Sorry?
It must vary the approved plan because there's more, as you just said, there's more detail.
We have prepared more detail as a result of the matters that were raised by the LPP previously, and we included those additional plans. The plans that you have in front of you, there's nothing, I mean, there was comments about, you know, what else is there? The plans that you have in front of you include the general arrangements that have been prepared by Scott Carver, and they include the perspective drawings and some of the detailed drawings. There was nothing else. We also gave you the stormwater drainage drawings, the amenities drawings. There's no broader set of drawings beyond that. We certainly carefully considered the drawings that we included in this review pack so that you're given the full context of the development that was proposed.
So I'm just asking which ones have been approved and if you could tell us when. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you, sir.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, what's your advice?
I feel extremely uncomfortable about the whole thing for the reasons that I gave before the public were admitted. To me, and I was on the panel that approved the demolition of the cottage, the one cottage at 48, although I was the dissenting view on that. I thought it shouldn't be. And the reason why I thought it shouldn't be because there was not a plan for the whole precinct. That remains exactly the same now. So we remove a cottage, we then remove 21 trees, but we're looking at a very, very complex design with new toilet blocks, playgrounds, seating paths, and so on, which to me requires a precinct approach. So I would have thought we would be looking at a DA that was more than the removal of 21 trees. In other words, the presentation we've just had on the park is completely immaterial to what we're being asked to decide. It has no relevance. This is not what we're being asked to approve, and I would have many comments about that. We're being asked to approve the removal of 21 trees. That may or may not facilitate this, or may not facilitate some other design for the park, but that's not what we're being asked to do. We're just being asked to facilitate the removal of 21 trees when there are clearly much bigger aspirations for the precinct, both for the park and for the commercial area. And I think it's I hesitate to use the word, but it seems to me slightly disingenuous that we're being asked to incrementally deal with these small issues without a very open and honest and transparent document before us that says what is the long-term plan for the whole precinct.
By the precinct, you mean the park area?
I mean the park and the commercial area around it, and its relationship to the zoning, you know, around it, and particularly to the commercial area.
Yes. Any comments?
Yes, my feeling is that we're being advised that there is an approved plan, but we don't have the detail of that in front of us. As Sheridan pointed out, we don't have the date, we don't have the DA. We seem to have a range of different concept plans. To make the decision about the trees, the removal of the trees being in the public interest, we need not only information about what has been approved and how these trees fit into that approved plan, but also what the replacement plan is. And I just don't have any information about what replacement trees are going in and where, to be able to make a decision about whether there is an overall public improvement in that the removal of these trees is in the public interest. So I feel like we're in the same position that the previous panel was, that we don't have the information we need to be able to make the decision.
Thank you. Meredith?
I echo, I think, what my fellow colleagues on the panel have said. I don't think we've had a demonstration of the public interest is being served by the removal of the trees.
Thank you. Yes, I find it somewhat complex. It's a relatively small question, removal of trees, but the overall issue is actually quite complex. And we need to see fully approved plan and evidence that it's entirely consistent. The tree removal is entirely consistent with that. So it seems that the panel is unanimous in not approving the present application, which was for removal of 21 trees and pruning of 7. Somebody would move that.
We should move that.
Who's doing that?
Second.
Moved and seconded. I take it that that's panel's unanimously.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful if we were able to then to provide some reason for that decision, which was about the broader context, to help council if it's going to come back with another proposal. And I think if we do that, it might be better if we did that in private. That is, if you think it's appropriate that we should give the reasoning at all.
I think it would help if you can frame something that provides the reason.
I think that's possible.
Can somebody suggest the wording?
Well, I think we might play around with that a little bit in private if we might.
Okay.
I think it would be easier, I think, to do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
I need to leave, unfortunately, I've got to go on to plane.
We've made the resolution, so whatever we
Yes.
write now, we could circulate and you could see how long the
Yes.
plane flies, 24 hours.
1.5 hours.
Sounds like a good excuse.
Yeah, I'm sorry to have to leave early, but my contribution to why or what would help them in the future is that they need to provide the background, the evidence of council's decision on the park, the plans that have been approved by council on the park, and a benefit effect in terms of what planning is being replaced.
Yes.